This presentation will introduce you to MLA style, specifically how to use in-text quotations, paraphrases, and citations. We'll also address the importance of using a style guide in so much as it helps you avoid confusion and helps you avoid plagiarism. So to begin, I want to stress the importance of using a uniform style guide. There are a number of reasons for this, but it ultimately comes down to the benefits to the reader, to the writer, and to the organization or individual that is publishing your material. For your audience or your reader, a style guide or a method of citation really presents a roadmap for figuring out research. We're using MLA style in this course just because it's an abbreviated 8-week section and because most likely MLA will be the style guide you use in Writing 102. But the way MLA works basically is you have your parenthetical citations throughout an essay, and you have your works cited page. Whatever is to the farthest to the left on the works cited page, and a lot of times that's going to be the author's last name, but not always. Whatever is at the left side of a citation will be the word that goes in your parenthetical. So if your source is by John Smith, your citation on the works cited page might be Smith John, the great book 2003, etc., etc. Your citation inside the text would be Smith and then the page number. So it provides a system for quickly understanding how sources work, how research is put together, how it's synthesized for the reader. For the writer, it makes it easier for you to distinguish your ideas from the ideas of others. It helps, again, with that synthesis and helps eliminate confusion. Finally, for the publisher or whoever is putting out en masse particular kind of writing, it makes layout easier. It makes a whole publication, like a journal or a book, consistent in look and feel. Why does it matter for you as a student? Even if you have a kind of a narrow view of the importance of this, the first is, using a uniform style guide will help you avoid accidental plagiarism. I don't like the term plagiarism in this context. I think it's a citation errors or improper citation, but you will come across more conservative professors who will call a missed citation or an incorrect citation plagiarism. You don't want a plagiarism asterisk on your transcript. So using a uniform style guide can help you avoid that. And ultimately, your chosen career, even if it's something totally unrelated to academia, will have some kind of style guide. You'll have to document something to specific guidelines, whether those are something that's in a book or just your boss's preferences. Even if they seem arbitrary, which oftentimes the MLA stuff will seem arbitrary, you have to follow the rules or you'll get fired. That metaphor might help you think about why this is important. In MLA style, there's two different instances where you'll insert an in-text citation. First being a direct quotation, where you take words ad verbatim from another source and put them into your own writing, and paraphrase, where you're synthesizing the ideas, thoughts, or processes, or specific knowledge or research of others into your own words. You're recasting the words of the author into your own language. In MLA style, all in-text citations are going to be parenthetical. They're at the end of a quote or a paraphrase thought, and they're inside the punctuation of a sentence. That means that the period, question mark, exclamation mark, etc. is placed outside the parenthetical. So for example, a direct quotation looks like this. Another kind of direct quotation where the author's name is outside the parenthetical looks like this, and a paraphrase looks like this. And again, the reason for an in-text citation, the reason it's there, is to point to the exact position of the source on the works cited page. Your works cited page is alphabetical, so whatever I see here, Smith, I should be able to go to the S section of your works cited page and find this particular source. That's the goal, is to make it an efficient way of locating sources in research. Now, I want to talk specifically about integrating sources into prose. And there's two different ways to do that, like I said, direct quotations or paraphrase. Direct quotations are effective only when you integrate them into the flow of your paper. You really need to use signal phrases, introduce the source, the reason for the quotations, and fit it into your own writing. You should not use a quotation just throwing in a quote in the middle of a paragraph without establishing the context. We should be able to go seamlessly between your writing and someone else's and follow your meaning and your reasons for including a quotation immediately. One way to go about this is to introduce the quotations. You want to know who is speaking, why does it matter, use a signal phrase, what the purpose of the quotation. So, for example, Henry David Thoreau asserts in Walden, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." You might use the author, you might use the name of the text, you might use a few different ways to integrate signal phrases, and you'll notice that if you name the author of a source in the sentence, you don't have to put his or her last name in the parenthetical. So we don't have to say Thoreau asserts and then Thoreau 5. You're only going to do that if you don't name the author in the sentence that's being cited. If your source isn't well known, if it's from an obscure author or obscure research, you need to establish context. So, for example, Mary Catherine Bateson, daughter of anthropologist Margaret Mead, has become in her own right a student of modern civilization. In composing a life, she writes, the 20th century has been called the century of the refugee because of the vast numbers of people uprooted by war and politics from their homes. Use a list of signal phrases, and I will put these as a list on the Blackboard page for this week as a resource so that you can come back to them when you need to use them. When you're integrating sources into prose or integrating direct quotations, you want to be careful about the words that you omit or substitute. It's useful to do this to make a quote fit grammatically, or to make it cut out unnecessary prose, but you don't want to distort meaning. You need to indicate omitted words with ellipses. For example, in reviewing the last episode of the Star Wars saga, film critic Roger Ebert claims that the dialogue throughout Revenge of the Sith sounds like basic English without color, with or verbal delight, as they were channeling Berlitz. You notice that these ellipsis points indicate that something has been taken out in the middle here. We have to trust the author that he didn't take out something that is important or that would contradict his particular argument, and that it was just sort of extra material. But you really want to be careful with the words that you remove, that doing so might damage your ethos. You need to explain why you're using a particular source, why it matters to integrate it. The good rule of thumb is to spend at least as much space in your paper explaining the source, explaining the quote, as the quote takes up. So if you use an entire block quote, paragraph block quote that fills up half a page, you need to spend at least that much space explaining why it matters. You never want to assume that the importance of a quotation is implicit, that your reader is going to get it. Even if obviously they are going to get it, you can't make those assumptions in an essay. An essay has to be self-contained. You have to make that explanation inside your writing, so that no one has to guess why something is included. Here's an example of a quote that's integrated, and you'll see that in blue, the buffer or the context is just as long as the actual quote. Sometimes you'll need to adjust a direct quote for clarity. A lot of times your quotes will not fit into the grammar or syntax of your own sentences. So sometimes you are going to have to adjust minor things to make a quote fit grammatically, or to make it more clear. For example, in the Sand County Almanac, although Leopold follows various animals, including a skunk and a rabbit, through fresh snow. He wonders what got him out of bed. Now, why is that unclear? It's unclear because the pronoun him as a referent doesn't point to a specific one of these animals. Are we talking about the skunk, rabbit, or are we talking about Leopold himself? It's not clear what hymn points to. So to change that to make it more clear, we would say, in a Sand County Almanac, Leopold follows various animals, including a skunk and a rabbit, through the fresh snow. He wonders what got the skunk out of bed. We put the clarification in brackets. Anything that you change, whether it's making a singular a plural, whether it's substituting a word, whether it's clarifying a pronoun, or whether it's adding a punctuation point, you'll need to put in brackets to indicate that you've changed something for the sake of grammar or clarity. For a grammatically incompatible example, you want to think about in the Sand County Almanac, Leopold said that living in the city is a spiritual danger if people supposing that breakfast comes from the grocery. Now, obviously, supposing is not the appropriate verb here. It makes the conditional clause incomplete. So we need to use the active verb suppose. So the corrected example would be, in a Sand County Almanac, Aldo Leopold said that living in the city is a spiritual danger if people suppose that breakfast comes from the grocery. The next part of this presentation will address the difference between direct quotation and paraphrase, and why you might choose one over the other.